Everybody, this is going to be part 5 of the Encampment series. This will be the 5th and final entry to the series, I think. I'll probably have some other videos to discuss Fibonacci and Lucas identities, because as in the process of my biblical study here and starting in on this book of Numbers, I did find some interesting associations that I don't think people have found with that particular mathematical finds. So I'll probably shift my focus over to that. It's pretty clear to me that you're going to have a firm grasp of the Hebrew scripture to crack this in its entirety, as far as what's talking about here. And I'm probably too far lacking at this time to be able to provide anything of use to people. But the hope would be that somebody would find this series, somebody that's really up on understanding the scripture, and maybe this will be some kind of a key that will unlock and help them in their discovery and understanding of this. And then, like I said, long term, I think it'll be pivotal for people on the whole to be able to sort of balance out life. Like I said, life is it's a gift. If you go back to this base scripture of Adam and Eve, it's a gift, but at the same time, people want the challenge. So you want the challenge, and this is the ultimate challenge: is to try and figure out where we are. What is this place? You know what I mean? So, and that's given in the scripture, but it's not easily provided. It's something that definitely is going to take the culmination of human effort to figure all that out. And I think it's important. It'll help. You got to maintain free will for people in this construct, but at the same time, you kind of things can go off the rails, and I think we kind of see that with society. It goes in waves, ebbs and flows, and I don't know where we're at on that wavelength, but you can see where people could really kind of take a turn for the worse, right? And they could let their own endeavors and stuff get the best of them without thinking about the people next to you. And I think that's where people could get out of hand, I think, a little bit, but it's kind of it's a delicate thing. So like if you come out and know exactly where you are and how everything is, it's sort of like being told to do something. You might want to do something, but as soon as somebody tells you what to do, then all of a sudden it's a big problem, right? Now you're going to choose not to do that thing. So you want it to be your own choice, your own will. And that's kind of a tricky balance. Same thing with Caesar and the authority, the highest authority, right? There's a balance that happens there, because people are going to want to figure out a way to work with each other and enhance their lives here. But, that's hard if you're going to start a structure, a social structure, but you don't know, if you don't understand the authority to its fullest extent. And that's kind of why you end up tearing down Caesar. Caesar builds up all of your different levels, right, to build your socio-economic system. And that might be based off of some miss, right, some degree of sin. And then people are going to see that sin down the road. They get angry, and then they're going to tear the system down. You're going to end up like the Israelites lost out in the wilderness, wanting to go back to the system that you had because it worked. So it's about so people got to be kind of wise in their movements and not get so angry if they find out that something was wrong, right? That they were told something or fed something that was wrong. You got to kind of go back to the time and kind of understand what the purpose was for for all of those levels that Caesar had put in, just like in the time of the Pharaoh, right? So right after the Pharaoh, they get plunged into the wilderness. Right after the time of Christ, you get plunged into a dark age. So those are the things that you want to kind of avert. You don't want to do that because, I mean, that will happen again. It will happen again when people understand and find out truth, and then they're going to go back and say, oh, well, you know, the iniquity, right? All the intentional thing. It's like, it'd be like, you know, as a kid, you know, you going off on your parents and burning your house down because you found out there was the tooth fairy wasn't real or something. You know what I mean? Or Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny or whatever it is, you know what I mean? So it's, you got to kind of look and take everything for what it is. Try not to be so angry, and then just eventually come to the point that life's a gift. You want to make the most of it. So, where were we in this series? So we're talking about this construct. We're getting down this path. I guess this is probably going to be more on the implications of what you find, because there's so much that could be left to be drawn out here. I've got a ton of different material, gone a ton of different ways in trying to draw out meaning in these numbers, almost to the point that, you know, you might think, I'm a lunatic, I'm crazy, but I like to think that I'm not. But what we do want to do is just try to project maybe what this is trying to tell us. Like I said, you're going to have to understand the tabernacle. Remember, at the end of this, you end up with Moses, and he can't enter the promised land. He can't get the promised land because he can't get the water from the rock. So there's other things that we need to consider, is like, what does that mean? What is the water from the rock? And so my opinion on what this is going to be talking about here is, let's see if we can get rid of some of this stuff. But my thing is, it's likely we're talking about magnetism, right? The water from the rock, understanding kind of the base structure of the electromagnetic dynamic. This is the, you know, a metaphysical thing that you know, puzzles people. When you get into the empirical science, you're going to get down this path of, you know, physics. You know, anatomy hinges on chemistry, chemistry on physics, physics on mathematics. So these are all kind of linked. They're all tied together. And this is what you're told is the thing that maybe is blocking them, right? So there is a, how I see it is, you're going to have to understand magnetism. I've touched on this as far as the, I've got magnetism in musical notation video out there to kind of, I think, help understand this. But you need to look at, again, I'll mention Ken Wheeler. You'll find him on YouTube. He's got a 6-part series on, or a 7-part series on magnetism. What I'll do is we can set this over here for a second, and we'll just look it up here. We're going to talk about this one too, solenoidal physics, but if we look at Ken Wheeler here, magnetism, we can Google search this, and when we find it, this is him right here. This is his site. So check him out, but he's got a 7-part series, wherever that is. This lecture right here. Go check out this lecture series, and yeah, this should help you reconstruct your understanding of what we're talking about, you know, with these, what it is, okay, because you're going to have a different idea in your mind. So check that out, and then once you do that, you'll come back to this concept of the balance, what's happening side to side here. So understand that this is one viewing device, the ferrule cell. You're seeing sort of the positive side of everything through here. This is kind of how we see the world. You got to kind of project what's happening on this other side. So what he's using is, he's got the same magnet charged piece of material, right? It's aligned, strengthened as a magnet. You can kind of see how that's done with magnetic materials get, organizing the alignment of everything, and then it's locked in through heating process, right, and plating. But you see kind of how he's got these two viewing devices. Cathode ray television tube. Cathode is negative, right? This is kind of how we see the world in this positive other side of the coin. Water's above. So see the difference between these two things. It's the same thing creating both of these images, right? You're getting both of these two different things with the same input, the same thing causing them, two different projections. So remember Newton, inverse and opposite. All actions have an inverse and opposite reaction. So we're seeing this from inverse and opposite viewing platforms. And so remember, cathode ray television tube would be the negative, which is a vacuum tube containing one or more electron guns. You could study color. Color would be an interesting study, how you're getting all colors from these three colors, right? Red, blue, and then neutral. But I would definitely, I think this is something that you'd have to study to fully understand maybe what he's talking about here in this magnetism a little bit. But yeah, and then as far as seeing this is looking down through a positive. You're looking pole to pole down, and you're seeing both spirals. You're basically seeing both sides are moving in both directions, right? The downward and the upward, so to speak, both directions. And you see that's split by this plane of inertia, and you have two sides to this coin. One side has more rotations, more spiraling than the other side, and we know that the balance of that is always it's this relationship that's 5-to-1. So it always grows more one way than the other way. Inverse and opposite, and that imbalance there is going to be this relationship of phi, right? And that gets into the fine structure constant and all that stuff. I speak on this at length in some of these other videos. You can see that tablet of Shamash video. I'll touch on this as well. The Lord is clothed, Psalms 93:1, right? The Lord is clothed in strength, right? Our x-axis, and the Lord is clothed in majesty, our y-axis. So these two planes, you think the physical plane, the metaphysical plane, and how you're creating this in the void space that you're getting in the middle, the aperture. So all these different things are things that you need to really study and understand to be able to get the water from the rock. Because I don't think you can get the water from the rock. You can't understand all of the story from Genesis up until Deuteronomy, the ending of it. You're not going to get it. It's not going to make sense. You can't enter the promised land unless you have a firm understanding of this, which this is 2014 is when this became available, or when this was available to the world, to be able to see the flux of a magnet so that we can understand sort of the movement. Now you got to understand that it's not just magnetically charged matter that does this. This is all matter that has this relationship of this sort of inverse and opposite, sort of compressive, dielectric, and magnetic force. So this is all matter that has it. You just you can see it through a device like this. You can manipulate, the iron in the fluid, the ferrocell fluid, to be able to see this pattern and it being side-lit like this. So this is a manipulation of it to be able to see it, but you got to understand that all matter is going to have this relationship, inverse and opposite, just like Tesla's talking about. So people like to take this and think that, you're trying to project this into everything's a magnet or something, which you can't really do. You don't want to do that. It's just this is how you're understanding the pattern of how everything works. So, and again, this tablet of Shamash, I think, is a good thing. The garments, right? The garments, how the Lord is clothed in strength and majesty. So, what can we do with this? All right, so then the next thing I think that's going to help you, like this is going to be sort of that X and Y axis, right? This would be a diagram of we're dividing everything, right? The material plane on the x-axis, the y-axis, the metaphysical, and we're creating 4 quadrants right here. 4 quadrants that we're going to create. Now we can kind of do the same thing with when we look at the moon. So the moon is kind of the same way, right? We have a new moon, and then we have a waxing half moon, or it's a full moon and then a waning half moon, right? And we have a shadow terminator line of how this moon is always divided. Now the interesting thing about this moon is there's another video that you're going to have to look at, and we'll go back to this selenetical physics. And there's a guy here by the name of Wrong Think is his name. But Selenetical Physics Volumes 1 and 2 would highly encourage people to check this out to better get a grasp of what we're seeing with the moon. He's got some other videos. I think that he's got some of that anger, right? Some of that anger that we talked about, that we kind of don't want to go down the path of the idea of retribution, of you've been lied to type stuff. That's troublesome. I don't think that really helps anybody out. But as far as understanding, I think he's got 2 very terrific demonstrations here of associating this. I won't take all of his, I won't play it here. But also he's got a preview of his 3rd one, right? The 3rd volume it's pretty fantastic. He does a tremendous job, so definitely check out what he's done there. But he's going to show you how this, you're going to take this moon image and you're going to basically, this is how we see the moon. If you flip this vertically, top to bottom, and invert it as if you're seeing it from the other side of the coin, right? Now you're going to see it upside down like this. It'll be flipped. So we've taken this, we've flipped it vertically, and this is what you're getting here. Now we've got this division, side-to-side division here, just like your shadow terminator line that we have. And now we've got the breakup, but we're going to break it into quadrants. So I put another, you can kind of see how we get in the outline. We've got the outline of Africa here. You can kind of make that out right here, and then you've got this sort of break, and then you've got another mass, and then all of this, all of these shallow waters right here in the Pacific would sort of be like this whole body, right? With you know, your Australia and all that, and then it gets weird because, you know, it's North America and South America get very tiny and very compressed. But one thing you'll notice is if we break this into quadrants now, we're breaking this into quadrants. If I take this and I'm going to rotate this 23 degrees and 23 off of 90, that would leave you at 66, right? So we'll go 66 degrees, and you'll see how this starts to line up. Rotating that from the center, and you see how some of these features that you find on the moon, you see how you're starting to line up on some of these things. So it's interesting that 23.5 degrees, if you index this 23.5 degrees, that starts to happen. Not only that, is you see now you've got all of this starts to fall in place. So all of this landmass is actually visible now in this thing, and you see how it's compressed and less compressed and less compressed, and then here it gets pretty exploded out. So you can see how we kind of have it's almost like we got a break point here, and then you can see how everything's sort of spiraling out and getting larger as you're coming out and around, right? So it's almost like you're taking this and you're just compressing all of this in very small and then less small, right? And then as you're rotating out, this is all becoming larger and larger in this image that you're getting right here. You got to remember that it's telling us we're seeing the Lord face to face, mouth to mouth, face to face. So this, what we're seeing, you see how the lighter portions, or the sort of your oceans, the salty seas, are going to be lighter. Continental masses darker in this, what we're seeing in the moon, right? In this luminary of the moon. This is what we're seeing, or we're getting shown all of this in this sort of setup. But again, 23.5 degrees. And this is taking us back to what we saw right here in the ecliptic, right? We found this in the numbers. So if we're taking our base structure here, now another thing is going to be you're gonna have to look at this, the whole the fish deal, the Pisces of this, the Vesica Pisces. Now there's you can look at, again, there's going to be a guy that helped me with this. Again, I don't align completely with everything that I'm getting from some of these sources, right? But Tomb of Illumination, Lindsay Harris, he's from New Zealand down there. I don't align with everything that he talks about, but he's definitely got a lot of great concepts that are going to help open your thinking up to kind of potentials of like what things might be. And again, this is, you don't want to like steal away anybody's, what's the word? You don't want to steal away anybody else's willful thinking or their imagination or all these other things. But if you're down this path of trying to figure things out and wanting to really learn what this place is and all this other stuff, you should probably look into some of these other concepts, right? Some of these other things. So if, again, I'm gonna take this sort of overlay that I have right here. I took this sort of Vesica Pisces deal just so that it would fit inside this, because really in magnetism also you're going to get sort of this dimpled sphere thing happening from side to side, right? And this is kind of what they talk about the world is now anyway, is this sort of dimpled sphere. So you're going to take this, and then I set this inside this sort of thing. This is our breakup, our Cartesian coordinate, our, again, strength and majesty. We're broken it up into 4 quadrants. Our positive, right? Our negative, and then 2 neutral quadrants. So just like we have here of the faces that are turning, we're told in this vision of Ezekiel with the 4 faces, and they're all turning different ways. And how that's working, we don't know. This is just like, I'm just trying to throw stuff up, and maybe something will pop for you, but kind of, I see it as, we know that, it's going to be turning one way, turning down here at a different speed. We're getting a difference between the sun and the moon. You got 2 quadrants where it's kind of neutral, where you're getting the stars, and they're turning in a different way, right? So your neutral quadrants with your nighttime stars are turning in a different way than your moon is turning and your sun is turning. So these 4 faces are turning kind of differently. So you kind of have this setup now where you have these 4 quadrants, the 2 neutral, you've got a positive, negative. We know that this from blue to red is phi to 1, so it's phi squared, 1 over phi squared, and then this would be like phi and phi right here maybe, right? Phi to 1, or 1 to 1, however you're going to look at it. So now we're going to put this Vesica Pisces type shape up here, because we're going to think of this as sort of like a dimpled sphere, flux of a magnet. You might have to do this multiple times as well. But this is going to help get you this idea of inside to outside. There's a mention in here in the scriptures about southward. If you go and look at all the different ways things are southward, it'll tell you south rimward, right? So that you're thinking outside south, inside north. So now we've got this Vesica Pisces type thing happening with your void space in the center. You've got your potentially your, all this with your tropical region. Now we're going to overlay, we can overlay our sort of ecliptic cross right here to give us some kind of, maybe something like this is happening with our chamber or bridegroom being created. We get this from the Psalms, and now we're going to be thinking Well, let's overlay our moon. How are we getting our moon? So our moon has got something to do with this 23.5-degree deal. You figure it's some kind of dielectric overlay that's happening, and it's coming through this void space in the center is how we're getting the moon. And it's going to be happening at a particular, we know that the Lord is creating a sort of stratified space for us. So one thing we haven't looked at real quick is going to be stratification. So earth and water being laid down, you get these perfect layers again, because just as you've got gravity bringing heavy down, that has an inverse and opposite reaction of the light getting pushed up. This is why you get even layers of earth by different densities being laid down by in water right here. So you got all these different layers of earth being laid down in earth strata, and it's going to be the same thing with your gaseous, right? Your stratosphere above, right? It's going to continue to happen with these other levels. So all of this is going to be different levels of elemental layers of things getting laid down in layers, the heavier being drawn down and simultaneously the lighter being thrown up. These two things are happening simultaneously, right? Equal and opposite reaction all the time. That's part of the Lord, the function of the Lord on the material plane. We talked about the vertical part of the Lord separating the potential for night from day, and then the horizontal aspect of the Lord is separating out all of these different aspects. And elementally, we understand that the periodic table shows us this breakdown. Again, hydrogen, this is combustible, highly combustible. This is the lightest element. This would be at the very tippy top. Right under that layer, you should have a layer of helium, four times as heavy as the hydrogen, right? And this is helium. Again, this is a noble gas. Noble gas right here. Reactive non-metal is going to be hydrogen, right? Noble gas of helium. So that's going to shield you, keep you from burning, and it's also going to illuminate. So if we look at MIG welding, how does a MIG welder work? We got an arc. This is a crossing of a material circuit and an electrical circuit simultaneously. So you got a highly charged circuit right here with a lot of amperage, and then you're putting this tiny welding rod against it, striking it, and there's so much it's becoming molten, right? Because there's not enough current, but you're continuously feeding the wire in and creating this molten pool. Well, this is shielded by gas, right? Inert gas. That's why it's called metal inert welding, right? Metal inert gas welding. So that inert gas is keeping this weld joint from popping and smoking and everything else. And you think about the weld flash burn that you're getting in your eyes, kind of like staring at the sun, right? So when you're looking at this periodic table, these gases, they shield and protect the burning. They're also gonna ionize and give you this different colors, right? Helium, this color of helium as it's ionized, neon, argon, right? Krypton, xenon, all these different gases, right, are going to give you these different colors. And this is kind of how you're getting, the way I see it, this is how you're getting your blue sky, right? And this is how you're getting the different colors of your setting sky. There's a lot of other people that look at this. You could look at Vibes of Cosmos. Has some interesting explanations on this as well. You can check out their site. They've got some pretty cool stuff. Again, I don't believe in everything they're talking about here, but they do touch on some pretty interesting. They've done some efforts there that are worth your time, worth your consideration and a look. So we got your, where were we? Oh yeah, we were talking about, let's go back to our construction here. So we got our setup here. How we're getting the moon, I don't know. Somehow this is happening, that you're getting this sort of dielectric overlay, and it's coming up, and somehow we're getting it on these layers. We have a layer of, from the earth up to our highest reaches, of this, right? We have our stratified layer of matter, and we're dividing night from day, side to side here. And we've got, these two circuits. And we know that the sun, right, the Lord, as it's turning in, is going to phase out the moon. This is what we praise as the sun turning, right? And as it's turning, we're told that we got this little wobble, the disjointed hip of Israel, that sort of, you're getting this bit of variance. You're getting this out and down, up and in type thing that's happening with this layer for your sun, is how I see it and how I understand it. And then this sort of same thing is happening with the moon. So you could see how this sort of same thing is creating your, whatever this little bit of wobble, this variance that you have off of the ecliptic for all these different things is happening for all these different points. Now all of your different planetary points, crossing points, as I see it, is going to be probably got to do with these break points in between these layers on this stuff, I would think, because they're all at different angles and different different rotations, and there's so much information that can come out of that. I'm not a stargazer. I don't know that very well. I mean, I'm trying to study Ptolemy's work from so long ago and all this other stuff, but it's hard to wrap your head around all this kind of stuff. You kind of need people that are well versed in all these different things to kind of piece it all together. And I know this is rudimentary. It's not very good. And like I said, there's got to be a better explanation that somebody can put together on this. But like I said, this is kind of the thinking or the concept I had in my head. I don't know if it's right or not, but it's just kind of how I'm seeing all of this, how it must be happening, right? How it must be happening that we're getting the moon, right? Based off of our cartographs and the work that people have done to chart this out. And again, this you're going to have some iniquity thrown up to you, I think, in this aspect of what this really is or what's really known. But at the same time, you've got to be really careful. I think there's some element of trying to mitigate sort of, the way people are going to want to be dismissive, because once you're going to break from into your reality of like, okay, we know for sure that we're within a closed system, right? And there's this sort of limit, and now we're certain about creation. Well, now it's like, now we're not certain about who the creator is. Now you're getting into holy war again. Now you're going to be getting into my God versus your God, and then my God's going to justify this, and who's your God, and all of this other stuff. So it's going to get really, really strange, right? If you start to break from some of this thinking and you get down into some of the uncertainty. But at any rate, from what like I said, when I first started into reading this numbers and trying to understand what was going on, I thought that, this is what I thought would get shown to me, was sort of I understand some of these cycles of the planetary, other planets and stuff that would kind of, make me think differently. I definitely had already been down this path right here. So I'd already been down the path of trying to understand magnetism, reconstruct my thinking. What is magnetism? What is light? The substrate of everything. And I'd already gotten down past the idea of the Lord being this cross, right? Of these two different cycles, right? And again, you're gonna get into like astrophysicists or other people or Kabbalists or whatever that are going to tell you that that Christ wasn't a real person or something, because this is true. Well, I think what you have to do is you're going to have to merge these two things. Again, this is going to be dynamic, right? So you got to look at Christ life being true, but the depth of the meaning of Christ's life is going to point towards all of this with the pinning of the hands, right, and the cross and all of this other stuff. Is the depth of the meaning should be enhanced. This is not the whole point of this is not to steal your thinking away, right, or to tarnish your mother. Like this gets back to honoring your mother and father, right? My mother versus your mother, right? Like everybody's only going to be able to truly appreciate and honor like where you came up, right? You're gonna be thinking a particular way because of the language you speak, because all of the history of the place that you came up out of the dust, and that's going to be a particular to you because of all of these other aspects, and it's almost impossible sometimes for people to try and see things from somebody else's perspective. But that is the challenge that we have to do, and we got to understand that everybody's got a piece to the puzzle, and the whole point of this is to be able to gather all these things from being spread out all these different ways, and to bring it back and to be able to put that together and to maintain. You still got to maintain sovereignty, but you want unity, right? It's all about striking this balance, the rest point in the middle, the green, right, in between the red and the blue, right? Finding that even, the balance point, getting back to getting centered, as Eastern philosophy will tell you, right? It's all about finding the balance. And, some of these signs, I tell you, in this study, everything got me pointed. I didn't expect it, but I got it pointed towards eclipses. So from what I'm gathering here, the eclipses here are going to be what's going to unlock how all of this works. Is going to be if this is understood, this eclipse pattern of how this is happening. This will be that's the key, as far as I can tell. To me, it's probably the Sabbath is going to be, keep your Sabbaths holy. To me, that's probably not going to be a weekly thing, because it's easy to remember Saturday to Saturday. Maybe not so much. You could lose track of when the next eclipse is, and it would be easy to, we know that if you look at apocalypto type thing, where people look at the eclipse and it's a demonic thing, and people don't keep it as a good thing, something that can help us. People like to demonize it pretty quick, so maybe you shouldn't be doing that. But at any rate, you can kind of grasp what I was getting at with like I said, the stratification of the highest level. The highest point of this is where you should be getting your sun, shielded by that layer of helium. You probably got a layer in here where you're getting the moon. How that's getting up through this rest point, who knows. But that's kind of how I see all of this working. I don't know how much more I've got to offer on this front. Like I said, if I come across something more in my studies, I'll be glad to share. If anybody has questions, I'd be glad to offer any of that. Certainly somebody, a lot of people will just dismiss this. They've got their own, things that comfort them. And a lot of people don't want to break from that. That's understandable. But like I said, I'm not here to break anybody from any degree of comfort. That's not the point. This is to enhance people's comfort, to help people, I would think, that are confused or ready to stray or something and do something crazy. People that, I would think that if you're thinking properly, you're probably not going to want to, hurt other people, right? Because you're going to see and understand that you have significance. You're not some piece of space dust in some infinite world that has no end or something, and it just really just doesn't make any sense, And a lot of people can get lost in their thinking. You start worrying about salvation, which I understand is one of the things that keeps people in the door at the church, but you don't want to forego the churches either. You want people to have that institution, right? Could the institutions maybe make some adjustments in their thinking? Yeah, I would think so. They do anyway, as it is. So you would think that they could maybe balance that out. But again, a lot of people act out of fear, and that's troublesome when people do that. But yeah, that would be my big take, that's my sermon, I guess, my message. Hopefully people will hear it and then not take it to some kind of extreme or something. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and hope to see you on the next one if I do another one. Thanks.